There's a specific type of man who reaches 11 to 13% body fat and actually stays there. He's not more gifted, he's not training twice a day or surviving on rabbit food. But most men who've been stuck at this 20% body fat or above for years aren't lacking in effort. They're just missing a specific set of mental frameworks that the lean guys are running on. And here is what those mental frameworks actually look like. So the guys who have been stuck above 20% for years are still waiting for an easier version of this to exist, waiting for the plan that lets them eat whatever they want most of the time and still be able to get ripped, waiting for the week when work calms down enough to finally do this properly. But that version doesn't exist. And that includes the guys on the GLP-1s like tirzepatide or semaglutide, because what I'm about to cover, you still cannot avoid. So the men who reach 11 to 13% and stay there didn't make a big deal about it. Because the truth is, the process isn't as complicated as everyone is making it out to be. You eat in a deficit that you can sustain, and you train to hold and build the muscle over time. And you move enough so that your burn stays elevated, and you just keep repeating this. The part that trips most men up isn't the information. It is accepting that there is no version of this where you don't have to be honest with yourself about what you're actually doing every day and week. Now, I'm not talking about brutal starvation or tracking every single lettuce leaf that you eat, but just an honest accounting of where you actually are versus where you think you are. And most men overestimate their consistency and underestimate the accuracy of what they're actually doing. And they've been doing both of those things for years. I've spent years hitting the gym, drinking protein shakes, trying to eat clean, and getting absolutely nowhere. Because my consistency was average at best, and my only real strategy was just copying what everyone else was doing or what some bloke's bodybuilder's uncle told him once upon a time at a barbecue. The first shift that lean guys make is deciding to stop doing all that. But accepting your reality as it is really only half of the battle here, because even if you do that, there's still something that will trip you up that has nothing to do with food or training. So if you're a numbers guy who likes data, like me, chances are you're treating the scale like it's a daily report card. Good number means you're feeling good, you're feeling motivated and on track, life's good. Bad number, and you are beating yourself up, feeling like nothing is working and you're ready to throw the whole plan out the window. And that emotional relationship with a single data point is why men often never break through. Your weight on any given day is just a reflection of your food volume, water retention, sodium, stress, hormones, sleep quality, and how recently you went to the bathroom. Now, if you're losing a pound of fat per week or half a kilo, that is a tiny fraction dropping each day that you're never going to notice in a single weigh-in. What you're noticing is all the other stuff. So you can be in a perfect deficit for 3 days straight and wake up a pound or two heavier. I've had clients who have done everything right and the scale was fluctuating for a few days, but then suddenly it drops 2 to 4 pounds. It's not that their body changed overnight. It's just that the scale takes time to catch up with the work that they've already put in. And men who stay lean don't look at just today's numbers. They look at the whole week compared to last week's, compared to the month before that, and so on. It's not about good days and bad days or a single data point. It's really about the longer trend. Because as you can see here, if you zoom in too closely, it can look like nothing's happening. But if you zoom out, you can see exactly where you have been heading the entire time. The scale is just one tool and it doesn't give you the full picture on its own. And once you've actually maintained that 11 to 13% for long enough, most men stop needing the scale altogether because the mirror just tells you exactly what you need to know. But then again, that level of awareness only comes after you've proven that you can actually maintain that 11 to 13% range first. Until then, weekly averages are your most reliable feedback tool using the scale and a bunch of other data. But a trend is only useful if you know what range you are supposed to be operating in, which we'll talk about next. So every guy who stays lean long-term has a set of numbers which he operates within. Not obsessively, but he knows them. a body fat range, a waist measurement window, a weekly average weight band. And the moment he drifts outside of these parameters, he knows it. And he also knows exactly how to rein things back in. So think of it kind of like running a business with KPIs. You don't stare at the dashboard every single hour of the day, but when a number goes red, you don't ignore it either. So most guys who stay stuck are kind of just going by feel or winging it based on what used to work. And when a bad day hits, they feel guilty enough to kind of do something extreme to compensate. So operating on feelings is not a system. Otherwise, everyone would already be ripped super fast. Within that window, there's also a simple nutrition framework. So it's not about forever strictly clean eating. It's not about tracking every meal forever, but it's closer to the 90-10 approach. That means 90% dialed in and clean, and 10% is your wines, your birthday cake, cookies, ice cream with the kids, whatever it is. However, that 10% is still accounted for. It is still planned. It is not a free pass that blows out the entire week. It's not about earning it and then punishing yourself afterwards. You simply just factor it in like any other variable in your schedule or in your life. And this is what separates the flexible eating approach to chaotic, cyclical yo-yo dieting. And how you respond when things go off track is one of the biggest differentiators between the men who stay lean and the men who don't. There's this awesome rule that James Clear talks about inside of the book Atomic Habits that the lean guys just seem to automatically live by without even realizing it. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. So a guy is, say, 3 weeks into a solid run, food dialed in, things are moving along, then busy week hits, schedule changes, there's drinks on with the colleagues on Friday, and instead of picking the ball back up on Saturday, he lets the week go. Then the correction gets pushed to Monday, and then the next Monday, and a month disappears. The blowout didn't derail him, but it was a decision to wait for the next perfect moment to restart. That is what crushed it. So men who stay in this 11 to 13%, they still miss workouts, they still have big weekends, they still go off plan. It's got nothing to do with being perfect. It's about how quickly you get back on the wagon after you fall off it and reducing the time delay between that. You don't need a perfect week to follow one bad day. It could literally just be tomorrow or even the next meal. And so if you recognize this pattern in yourself, the yo-yo of good and bad weeks and bad months or whatever, that's not a discipline problem. That is a system problem. And it's exactly what I help men fix. And if that sounds like where you're at, links in the description to learn more about it. Now, the next thing that lean guys do might surprise you because it has nothing to do with what they're currently eating or how they're training. And I'll explain why. So picture two guys starting at the same fat loss journey. The first guy tells everyone, he posts about it, makes a whole commotion about everything he's doing. The second guy says nothing. He adjusts a few things and he chips away behind the scenes. Now, 6 months later, who do you think has people stopping and asking him like, hey, what have you been doing? You're looking great, or you've lost weight. Now, the difference wasn't genetics or willpower. So the second guy kept his commitment to himself and he let his actions do the talking. His meals were planned for the week ahead. His workouts followed a repeatable structure that always progressed, and his data was in one place so he could easily adapt things and change it to fit where his life was at. Now, he didn't have to think about what to do next. He just followed what was already working for him the whole time. So think of it like running a business on documented processes instead of trying to do some heroic effort for a very short amount of time that's never going to last, right? The owner of a business doesn't need to be fired up every morning to keep the system running. And when that system is in place for you, being lean doesn't become a grind anymore. It just becomes what you are doing. But that system is only as good as the numbers you're feeding it. And most men have never actually worked out what those numbers are. So the men who stay lean have internalized a specific set of numbers. They know exactly how much they need to eat to lose fat, how much they need to maintain, and how much tips them into gaining fat. It's not a rough guesstimate, but they know specifically. They know what happens when their activity drops or when they miss a week of training, they skip the walk, or have a sedentary work trip. They know the impact and they adjust accordingly. They know the minimum training dose that keeps their muscle and metabolism where it needs to be. So whether it's 2 or 3 sessions a week, they know what it costs to skip this, but they also know the benefit of just getting it done and how that's going to pay off long term, even when they don't feel like it. So trust me, most guys aren't excited for every single workout and every meal they have to eat when they're lean. But it just becomes like brushing your teeth, something that you do every day without giving it too much thought, if any. The numbers are already decided, so the decision doesn't have to be made from scratch every day or every week. And then when life throws something at you, whether it's a brutal month at work, kids are sick, there's an international work trip or events or whatever it is, they know what it is that needs to change so they can quickly adapt to it. And as I said, this is not about discipline. It's just about knowing your data and knowing, okay, well, if I can't do this, I can do that. And I'm still going to stay in this range that keeps me lean. But here's what most men never consider. If you have been stuck in the 20% range for 2 years or 3 or even more than that, it's probably not your genetics. It's not that your metabolism has crashed to 0 or that you've got less testosterone than a chihuahua that's had its nuts removed. It is simply that your system that you're currently running, even if you don't see it as a system, is calibrated to keep you exactly where you are. So everything that you're currently doing is adding up to your current body fat level. That is not a plateau. That is just a maintenance plan that you've kind of accidentally built that you didn't even know. For most men, that cycle runs for many years, same belly hanging over the belt, same clothes that are getting tighter, and the same conversations they keep having with themselves about finally sorting this out in some indefinite future date. Now, most men never break through because they keep adding more of the same inputs and expecting a different output. More cardio, stricter periods of eating next to nothing, quitting alcohol, but then bringing it back in hardcore, eating no carbs, but then binging them, hopscotching across different diets, but never actually following one all the way through. Now, there are plenty of guys at 25% body fat who can outrun you for hours and outlast you in burpees and push-ups and crunches and all that. Yet, they can't lose any body fat because fitness and leanness aren't the same thing. Breaking through isn't about working harder. It's about building a system that is designed to get you there and optimizing your hormones, building a high muscle to low fat ratio, and then dialing in your recovery, helping you managing stress and keeping your gut healthy. Not perfectly all at once, just doing a decent job of this over time. The men who crack 15% and keep going, they're not overhauling their entire life. They're just overhauling their system to work inside the life that they already have. And that final shift that makes all of this stick really has nothing to do with tactics. Everything we've covered in this video, the numbers, the systems, the recovery speed, the quiet consistency behind the seeds, all of this falls apart without this next thing. Most men who aren't losing body fat, can't break below 20%, are still unconsciously identifying as someone who is trying to lose fat. It is a phase that they're in, a problem that they're trying to quickly fix. However, the men who reach 11 to 30% and stay there, stopped chasing leanness, obviously because they got lean enough, but they started living as someone who is simply this way. When your identity is, I'm trying to get lean, then every decision is a negotiation. But when it is, this is how I live, this is who I am, the negotiation goes out the window. How you order at a restaurant without making it a thing, how you handle a bad week without it becoming a bad month, how you show up to the gym, not because it's about being motivated. When someone asks, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? You say chest and biceps without even thinking. I'm just kidding, but not really. Your self-worth stops being tied to the scale or how your abs look on a particular day. You're just a man who holds yourself to new standards and you just get on with it. These men have gone from fat island to lean land and then they burn the boats. They're not going back. And eventually, they don't even remember what it felt like to live on Fat Island. And once that identity settles in, which can happen well before you get to 11 to 13%, you can decide that I am this lean guy. I do make my health a priority. I pay attention to my data and I make decisions that is going to get me there. You can adopt this identity, just like Brad Pitt can adopt different identities for a different movie. And once that identity settles in, maintaining 11 to 13% when you get there stops feeling like discipline and it's just naturally who you are. And if anything in this video has resonated with you, you're probably not far off from where the men I work with were before we actually fix this. So the missing piece is the right system built around your goal, your schedule, and all the data that is unique to your current body composition and where you want to be. So the men who fix this don't just look different. They stop thinking about it constantly, and that mental freedom is worth as much as a physical result because they're not waking up fighting themselves every day. And if you're ready to finally fix that for yourself with a systemized approach, tap the link in the description below this video to get the details. Then go watch this video next where I break down the brutally honest timeline to lose belly fat.